Welcome everyone for today's Orchestrator meeting. And yeah, let's see what we have on the agenda. So we have...
Was the question about the 30 node number that I threw out?
Yes.
I pulled that out of my butt. I don't know what the actual number is, but
So we have users out there with at least 1,000 OSDs.
with Ceph ADM, 1,000 OSD.
Yes.
Oh, nice.
Minimum.
Okay, cool.
So I think we are actually better than 30 nodes.
Nice. Okay, that's great. But in any case, I think the main thing I said was that the next step is to get the exporter thing working.
Yeah.
It still needs a little work, but that'll be a dramatic improvement. I think once that's in place, then I think we won't have any real issues.
Right. Yeah. Okay. Yeah, there are plenty of things that we can still do from an architectural point to improve the performance, scalability, but having the exporter certainly helps. Okay, so we have some interest in the Google Summer of Code project, which is great. So I have at least 3 people that contacted me by email and want to look into low-hanging fruit issues, beginner tasks. And yeah, let's see how it goes. Yeah, I think Ernest, you're also participating in the project, right? So one idea would be to just add ourselves as co-mentors for the other project. I think that certainly helps because our components are so closely related.
Yeah. Please check your LinkedIn as well, because I received a couple of GSOC candidates through LinkedIn. So
yes, at least one contacted me via LinkedIn. Okay. Yeah, the next backplot pull request.
Yeah, it was like a horrible experience building that because I didn't have the scripts that you normally use to identify wet backports, and so I did it like 1.5 times and then ended up restarting from scratch and like walking sequentially through git k stuff. But I eventually found it, and then this morning realized that there was a bunch of typing stuff that was in a different, unrelated to Ceph ADM, and so I ended up backporting a bunch of like Prometheus and some stuff from Kifu, and I cherry picked basically just enough to make the test pass, and didn't really try to capture the full pull request of the stuff that Kifu was doing, which was adding type annotations to like every other module.
Yes.
So I think that's okay, but anyway, the talks test passed now, and I'm running it through the QA suite right now, so we'll see what happens.
Okay. Yeah, then let's continue using the script to backport those.
Yeah, I didn't know where it was. Or how to reuse it.
You could have asked from Miguel.
Oh, I asked.
Yes,
somebody.
yes, I have tried with it, but it's a nightmare. So I think that everybody suffers the same pain. Okay, about trying to go with something that could be that is sure that you are not to leave any pull request behind, because it's very difficult to know that. So
Yeah,
maybe I think that we need to think a little bit about that, okay, in order to just to, for example, to prepare or to have a reference to the last pull request that we have backported, okay, and started with that.
Yeah,
use the script, okay, and try not to lose any pull request. But in any case, is
Yep.
it's incredible.
What I ended up doing is just diffing that part of the tree against master, and so at the end of the whole thing, they match except for like one line, which is can't remember why I didn't chase that one down. It was whatever. It didn't seem important. There's basically like one line difference right now.
Okay.
It's pretty close.
Okay.
Anyway, okay.
Yeah.
That experience is behind me now. I want to relive it.
What would probably be easier if I would have just run the script this morning or so.
Yeah, it's okay. It was a learning experience.
Okay. But glad we're good to go here.
Let's see. The other one was okay. So on the lab cluster, and actually saw something similar on mine when I was upgrading. There are all these old monitoring containers that don't have the podman command to remove the container before they start. So like system cuddle restart throws errors. And so it was doing that in the midst of the upgrade. Doing the redeploy manually fixed it, but I think we should make it so that upgrade can try to detect that situation maybe and do a redeploy before.
That's
because basically
implemented by Adam's pull request. Not really, but
it sort of. So the problem is that it's partway through the upgrade. Well, maybe Adam's pull request would have fixed it. It basically got through something. I think it's the monitors upgraded, and so then the mon map epic changed, and so then it goes and wants to reconfig to regenerate all the Ceph.confs. And it did a reconfig on Prometheus, and then that failed to do a system cuddle restart. Although I think it's probably an unrelated bug that we shouldn't be doing a reconfig if the Ceph.conf changes on Prometheus because it doesn't use Ceph at all in that case.
So Adam, your pull request. You're now storing the repo digest of the manager that was used to deploy the container, right?
Yeah. Well, this was mostly for, I guess, at the end of the upgrade, if unit.run needed to be upgraded, but it wasn't because that daemon wasn't redeployed during upgrade. I don't know if it does anything for things in the middle of the upgrade.
No, I don't think it does in the middle, but at least in the end, it's going to redeploy at least those daemon types. But I think it's super trivial to extend your code to also redeploy the monitoring parts because it's the very same mechanism. If it wasn't deployed with the current container image, then just redeploy it again.
Yeah. I don't know if it's I didn't look at your pull request closely yet, but I wonder if it can do it as it walks through all the daemon types so that the first phase it does the managers. If it's done with the managers, they're all running the right versions, but they're deployed with previous versions, like do the redeploy then. So it sort of does top down instead of waiting till the very end of the whole cluster being upgraded and then redeploying a bunch of managers. You know what I mean?
When you're in like the normal upgrade, instead of checking the repo digest of that container, you check who it was deployed by.
Yeah, I mean, it'd be the same check, but just do it as it goes type by type.
And you want to like just add all the other daemons that we don't upgrade to the end of the process?
Yeah, maybe. Well, I don't. Yeah, I mean that part. I don't feel strongly about that. Although it seems like it would be easier to just do. It says like checking manager daemons if it just checks all the versions are correct, and then it also checks that they were deployed by the correct version at the same time. Like it seems like an appropriate time to do it. But in any case, I think that's actually separate from this problem. So that solves basically this category of bugs, except that in this case, the reconfig is triggered because the mon map changed, and we're reconfiguring a Prometheus daemon that shouldn't be reconfigured at all. Like all these monitor daemons don't have a Ceph.conf file in them, and so they don't need to be reconfigured. So I'll open a ticket for that. I'll put it on my list. And yeah, to reconfig. And I think the combination of those two things should solve the problem.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then next thing would be to extend your pull request to also upgrade the monitoring stack.
Yeah. I mean, I guess that's another reason to pull it into that existing loop where it goes by type of daemon, because we just aren't upgrading the monitoring stuff at all right now, but we should probably have some sense of what.
Okay. Next topic? SE Linux on smoke rollers?
Yeah, I just started seeing these errors. I think it was yesterday. That was the first time I saw it, but it's when I run the Ceph ADM suite. It seems to be just the smoke rollless ones, and I think the difference is that those ones are deploying the monitoring stack. But there's just like a wall of like hundreds and hundreds of SE Linux denials, which is at first I was like, oh, well, maybe it's just that we haven't been running the monitoring stuff in Toothology, but that's actually we have first, but also mixed in with these monitoring ones are also Ceph daemons also getting denials. So I'm confused why it's only happening on some of these Toothology tests and not
It didn't
others.
happen before.
And it did not happen before, yeah. So maybe, yeah, I can go through and look at the last few Ceph ADM suites and try to find the last time these ones passed it, and then try to see what changed since then. I don't know. It's weird. I'm not, yeah. But I just want to mention it so you can look out for it. Yeah.
Interesting. Smoke rollers was pretty stable for me for the last month.
Yeah. And all it does is just deploy stuff and then. Oh, I guess the other thing I noticed is that those runs are pretty long. Like a lot of these other tests are like 20-minute, 30-minute tests, and smoke rollless is like an hour and a half, 20 minutes. So maybe these just don't happen until you've been running for a while. I don't know. I don't know. But there are other slow ones too. There are other tests that take that long, like the thrashing ones.
Anyway. It also doesn't have a sentry event attached to it. Interesting.
No, it triggers a Toothology run, but it doesn't throw a Python exception, and so the sentry.
Okay. Next.
Okay. So the RJW ports pull request, I ran through QA again last night, and it passed again, except for these SE Linux errors, which I'm guessing aren't related, but I'll confirm that today. So I think it just needs the final review. Make sure the first half of the first set of patches that had all the scheduling stuff, I did merge because that was approved earlier. But this adds the ports tracking, so it needs to go in. Next. It does have limitations, right? It doesn't like doesn't detect port conflicts across different services or anything like that. And it does have this issue where if you try to change the ports, it doesn't. The way that the scheduling stuff works, it has a delta of things to remove and things to add, and it always adds before it removes. But if the ports are like being reused or something like that, then you actually have to remove and then add. So it doesn't detect that type of situation and reverse the order. But I think aside from that, I think it's
could give it a review.
All right. Oh, and it includes that SSL thing that I mentioned the other day. Anyway, yeah. And then the second one is the adding the subnet part. And that one does need work, but I could use some guidance on what to do there. So I added the networks as a property of the RGW spec because that's the only thing that needs it at the moment. But you mentioned that maybe it should just go on service spec. But once I started thinking about it, I was wondering if we should put it on placement spec, along with even ports possibly, because it's like, I don't know. I mean, it almost feels like this is a general concept, and that this whole allocating IPs and ports for services is something that is like more like placement than a property of the service. And it like moves us closer to host placement spec, which has that weird thing for the monitor IP, which is not quite the same thing, but it's very similar. I don't know. I wasn't sure. Wasn't sure how far to go down that road or not.
Isn't it more of a global property? Is it really related to services? Or is it something global?
I think it's sort of the intersection of the two, right? It's where you want the services to run, right? Like in the OpenStack case, you want the services to be bound to a certain network, which is a host property, like whatever, because it has to be uncertain. Like if you think about how these systems are like deployed, you would have you might have a whole Ceph cluster, and then you have a set of nodes that are attached to a different physical network that's like the outside world, and they're actually literally gateways. And so it's almost like a placement constraint. Like one way you could do that, the way you would do that today is you would label those specific nodes with a host label, and so you would map the services onto there. But you could imagine you would also just say like they should be serving on subnet, whatever that public network is, and then we would just sort of implicitly identify those as the only hosts that have access to that subnet, and so we would place it on those hosts.
Kubernetes had the concept of a host pod resource. But I don't think that applies for us.
Yeah. I mean, it's a little different because Kubernetes does like virtual networking for everything. So
exactly.
Not quite one-to-one, but I don't know. It almost feels like specifying the subnets that you want to bind to is a placement constraint, right? That's what it feels like. Maybe ports not so much because every host has ports, so it doesn't constrain placement per se. But that's for the IP, but it does. But I don't know, like putting a network list in as a set of constraints inside the host placements or the placement spec. Like if you just imagine writing a unit test for this, I wonder if it'll just be too weird because
I think that in the case of the host, you are providing too much granularity, okay? And this is something that I think that is related with a service. You want that this service that is going to deploy all these daemons, all the daemons are going to work with the same network. Okay, so for me, my view is a service attribute. So putting that in the placement I think that is the right place. To go to the host placement, I think that this is to try to give the possibility to place different diamonds in different hosts with different networks, and it has not too much sense for me. So I think that the placement spec is the right placement.
Mm-hmm.
The placement spec cares about placing of daemons and not so much changing on which port or on which IP a daemon is listening on. Is it really
No,
part of the placement spec?
the subnet. I am referring to the subnet, okay? To put an attribute into the placement about the subnet, okay? A part of the host or a part of the labels is another attribute of the placement. And this means that all the diamonds that are going to be deployed with that placement must use the same subnet.
To some degree, it does make sense. To put it into the placement.
Yeah. I mean, the thing is, like, internally, I want to call it networks and have it be a list. But we might want to, like, allow the syntax this, whatever also, right? So that you don't have to, like, specify as a list, because that's a lot of times it'll just be a single network.
Why a list stage?
Because for a spine leaf, I think they're calling it, whatever, then they have basically they have a IP subnet per rack, but a particular category of host is spanning multiple racks. So for a logical service that's like replicating and distributed across racks, there's actually a list of subnets that are of the correct type that they need to, and you need to choose an IP in whichever one is appropriate on whichever host is in the right rack. So if it's in whatever.
Okay, and how you are going to map the different networks to the different hosts?
For any given host, it'll be in one of those.
Okay.
Depending on which rack it's in. Yeah. Yeah. I think maybe the distinction though is that the networks it's a filter in that it's limiting the number of hosts that we can consider, but it's not actually telling us where to place the daemon. Right? Like just specifying networks is not sufficient. Like you still need, of all the existing fields, you still need some of those, or whatever the rules are, like either count or count by host plus a label or whatever. Like you still need all that. This is just a supplementary, like also filter it down by this. So maybe that's a reason why it shouldn't go in the placement. Because the other properties in placement don't work like that, right? They aren't filters that limit. They're like positive statements of where to place it, as opposed to negative statements of where not to place it.
It's a filter. It's also a filter.
Yeah, right.
If the network does not exist in the host, the host is not going to be selected. So,
but none of the other placement properties are filters right now. That's what I'm saying.
In a way, they are.
I mean, they filter down from the set of all possible hosts, but there's sort of clear rules about, like, if you say label RGW, then you place one on every host or whatever, right? Like you place that many, right? Whereas if we said network whatever, like, do we want to make it so that if you have this, then it'll basically go and find every host in the network, and if there's an IP on that host, then it'll place a daemon there? Like, that doesn't seem like what we want.
It's a bit strange.
Yeah.
But we should still put it under placement if we want to filter. Like, if you want to have something like count 8 and only network, like count 8 and network.
Yeah.
Do we want to place 8 daemons on host spread across all hosts that match that network? I think so, yeah. So in a way, it still is part of the placement spec.
Yeah. It'll just need to be, I think when you're describing how placements work, then it'll be like in a separate category of properties that are filtering candidate hosts but aren't actually describing which candidate host, I guess. You know what I mean?
If you really want to embrace co-locating hosts, co-locating services on hosts, then we could also say that just doing stuff like only supplying the label RGW is not going to be enough. You still also need the count or count per host.
Yeah. But I like the I don't know, I like the label. Like I feel like that's a easy to understand way. Like I want RGWs here. These are my RGW nodes. Deploy on those, however many they are. I think that seems like an intuitive way for media to do it. I guess.
On the other hand, we are still already have some filter properties that are outside of the placement spec.
Yeah.
We are filtering the mon networks that are not part of the placement spec for the monitors right now. For HARGW, we are filtering for a kernel property and only deploy hosts that match that kernel property. So we already have filters that modify the placement spec outside of the placement spec.
Yeah. Yeah, they're just
that would be an argument to put it into the spec itself.
But those things are implicit, like those aren't users don't really control those filtering properties.
Not yet.
I guess for the monitor network, they do. Like you can imagine this network's mapping to whatever the mon public network.
Mm-hmm. I think both ways I think both is okay.
Yeah. Well, I wonder if the simpler one is just to put it on service spec like you originally suggested.
That's good.
In which case it would look like this with them at the top level, and then you would have spec. The other random stuff like that.
Yep.
Okay. Okay. Go ahead with that.
Hey.
Okay, I think that's it. I'm really hoping this backport batch is going to pass. Looking okay so far. I have 3 passes and 1 failure on that stupid cubic podman error, whatever. So far, so good. Because then, if I guess if we can prioritize getting that backport thing reviewed, I can merge it and then I can deploy it on the lab cluster. And if that goes well today, then we can do the release candidate for Pacific tomorrow. That's like that's the the goal, because we really want to get this. We want to have the final Pacific release in about a week and a half, 2 weeks. So we got to get this. If this works, also I can run the upgrade tests, upgrading to Pacific, and make sure all those test suites are in good shape.
I was working on the we are having a health warning in the FFS mirror test.
Oh yeah.
I was looking into that today, but
I
haven't been able to finish it.
I think I didn't. Did I not see it, or did I just ignore it?
I think it still breaks.
My last run, I did not see it.
Interesting.
Yeah. Here it is. Run. But that was the one that included the fixes I merged yesterday for all this oh, the like auth key rejigger change, whatever, where it's updating the caps. And it included the RGW thing.
Oh, it succeeded indeed.
Yeah. So maybe it went away. But the end-to-end test is still failing, and this iSCSI disk thing is still failing. So maybe I'll look at the iSCSI thing next. Figure out why.
Regarding the dashboard test failure. So my idea was to just put it into the dashboard suite, because it in the past it was more like dashboard related issues and less caused by Ceph ADM.
I thought that happened, didn't it? Or did we just?
There was an open pull request, but it was never not yet merged.
Thought it merged. Maybe it was a different one. There's someone moving an entire subdirectory. Oh no, yeah. Weird. I thought it merged because I thought I hit conflicts trying to backport the. Ernesto, do you know? Did that merge?
Yeah, I remember that one, but I'm not sure if it was merged. Yeah, this is it, right? It's just renaming moving the location. That one.
Wasn't merged yet.
Okay.
We need to run it through the dashboard queue, I guess.
Okay. Well, that'll get it out of the Ceph ADM thing, but we still need to fix. Do you know why the tests are failing, Ernesto?
That specific one. Okay, let me check didn't see URL.
But I would still like to have a dashboard test. Maybe a backend only test, having some kind of cluster deployed by Ceph ADM and then run one of those dashboard Python test cases. That would be great.
Yeah.
Maybe the pool test, or I don't know. That would be great.
Just
to
so
know that the dashboard
API
is working.
works. Yeah.
I'm checking the link you share, Sage, but I don't see. Okay, yeah, the second one, the second failure.
Yeah.
We'll have a look at that.
Okay, thanks. Okay. Are there, so beyond this RGW ports and networks subnets thing, are there any other blocking things that we need to fix for Pacific? Sebastian, is there anything sort of critical? Like what's in the, I haven't been looking at the tracker. Are there like open tracker issues that are critical or?
Plenty of tracker issues, but nothing that would block a Pacific release.
Yeah. Oh, there's a unit.run thing I just talked about earlier. I'll fix that.
Yeah.
But
we have to continue investigating that failed to execute one no such file directory thing.
yeah, and all the variants.
Yeah.
I think I saw it on CentOS with the cubic things also. So it's related to Podman 301 or whatever. It's not distro specific.
Yep. Might be related to specifying dash init. But it went when that it's going to go away with just avoiding the dash init thing.
Yeah.
Maybe we should have a subcategory of the Ceph ADM suite. One with dash init, and the other one without dash init. So what we are going to test both.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we could add a facet to all the whatever test subsets that we test either way. Yeah.
I don't know. That's worth it. Maybe not.
Oh, yeah. I have another thing, I guess, to discuss. Yeah, I think adding a facet to turn it on and off, I think that'd be good. It's just a config option, right? That controls the init behavior.
Yep.
Yeah. Okay. Okay, so the thing that I was noticing is that when, especially with services like the RGW service, we're setting config options for services and individual daemons that we deploy. So an individual daemon gets the RGW front ends option set. And after you delete them or delete a service or whatever, you end up with just a bajillion old config options that don't get cleaned up. It's also a problem because in the service spec, you can specify that config section with a bunch of random options to pass through. And if you remove an item from that, Ceph ADM will set all those options, but it won't know that a previous instance of that service had set an option and now it isn't present anymore and remove it. So it's only additive. So I think the way to do that is to extend the config database, and so that there's an extra field that's either a comment or a owner or a tag or something for every config option that's in the database. And so if we can link it back to the service spec or whatever it is, whether it's, I don't know if it's going to be the service name or the daemon name or something, we can link it back to Ceph ADM so that it knows that it previously set it and is allowed to clean it up.
So we are already cleaning up MDS_join_fs.
Okay. And we do that when
in the purge method of a service.
Okay. Is that
we just need to implement it.
Daemon? That's on the service. Okay, but
that's on the service.
On the service. Okay. But this is on individual daemons.
No, that's on the service.
The service. Okay. Well, so for the RGW service, there are two options that we set: the RGW zone and realm.
Yeah.
So those we can purge. But there's also one that's on every daemon instance. That's the RGW front ends, and that one couldn't be cleaned up here because we needed a similar function that cleans up.
We have that already as well. We have, I think it's called post remove, or let me.
Okay.
We have post remove. This one, yeah.
Okay. So that is half of the problem then.
I've already post remove.
Okay. So I can do that for RGW then, and that'll clean up. Yeah, okay. That'll clean up those options. But that still leaves the config section where the user can arbitrarily like set random options in the spec. And if they change the spec to no longer have those options, then we don't know to clean them up.
I mean, at some point a few weeks ago, I've added in you when we are only deleting the servers after removing all the daemons, except for overseas. We've talked about it yesterday. And when we have removed all the daemons, and then we are going over all server specifications, and then deleting all the services that are supposed to be deleted, and no longer have any daemons attached to them.
Mm-hmm.
That's a purge method. We can make use of the purge method to also clean up those configs that were set by the server spec in the config section. But it's a bit dangerous if we are only overwriting a config. So we would need to kind of resurrect the old configuration if we are going to delete the config option. It's a bit dangerous.
Mm-hmm. I think it's. I wouldn't worry so much about that because they're all scoped under service name. So it'll be RGW client, RGW foo, and the options. So it'll like there wouldn't normally be existing options there that we're overwriting and then deleting.
Then we can just implement some kind of purge for the config section. I mean, why not?
Yeah, I think that solves the removal case, but it doesn't solve the case where first you apply one that has as equals whatever, and then a day later you reapply one that just has foo bar. It doesn't know to remove Baz. Like if you're just revising, if you're updating a spec.
That's a general problem we have. If you're removing options from a server specification, we are not properly creating a diff between those compared to Rook. Rook does it, right? If you're reapplying a CR, a Kubernetes CR, then Kubernetes will create a diff between the old version and the new version. We are not doing that yet, but it's a general problem not only for the config section. But we are not properly tracking changes.
Right, but we are still storing the new desired state and like trying to achieve that desired state. So I think for most options it doesn't matter. Like if you change the placement and drop a property, we'll just store it without that and we'll recalculate our scheduling based on that, and it'll end up with a different. Like we'll still converge.
As long as we are not storing them in the config key database. If we are storing properties in the config key database, then removing options will not remove them from the config key database. Like, for example, in this iSCSI pull request here. One moment, let me.
Like the spec is turned into a blob of JSON and it's put in one key that's named after the spec. So the whole spec is delta as a unit. So spec properties disappear. They'll go away. But like, I guess to your point, if you drop the SSL property from RGW and then reapply, it won't necessarily know to redeploy daemons. I think that's
This one here. 37588. That's a pretty old pull request by Matt, where he's storing all the iSCSI
I see. Yeah.
things into the config database, into the config key database. And those are not getting cleaned up if we are just dropping a property from that.
Yeah. Agree. But are they prefixed by the name of the service? Spec.mon config prefix.
On config prefix.
As long as if they're scoped by the name of the service, then we could identify what they are and we could clean them up.
Yeah, they're scoped.
I don't know if this pull request does it, but that's like a fixable.
Yeah.
Yeah. The config ones are a little bit different because they're arbitrary config options that could be. Well, no, they're scoped to the service, I guess, actually. So, So we could do that, but then the thing is that I don't think we should have the Ceph ADM look at all config options that are scoped to the service and delete any that it isn't responsible for setting, because that prevents the user from going and setting other options themselves. So it seems like either Ceph ADM needs to keep track of which options it previously set, so it knows those are the ones that it's responsible for cleaning up, or the config key or the config database has to have an owner property that references the other direction.
The config key database, does it have version information for each version of the config key value?
Not for each key, no, it doesn't.
We could still diff the specs and see if options got removed. That's still possible even without touching the config key database.
Yeah.
I think both work.
Yeah. Okay.
One thing.
Whatever
What about to store? Well, if we have a set of settings that we are going to change, the first thing to do is to get these settings. What are the current settings in this moment, and store that in the service. And after that, we can apply the config options from the spec file. And if we delete this service, then the thing to do probably is just to restore the previous values.
Yeah, I think it's a question of where. Well, okay, so I mean, for the immediate case, I think the RGW, it's easy to clean up the RGW stuff. And I think for now, if you use the config thing, then you're on your own at the moment until we have. I don't think it's a blocker. Okay.
Okay.
Do we have anything else?
Nothing.
So is there anything else we're worried about for Pacific?
Except for the upgrade?
Yeah. Yeah. I wish I had another Octopus cluster that was an actual cluster that I could upgrade. Because my local cluster is fully upgraded now. I fixed enough bugs that it completed. The lab cluster still just started, so once this big backport pull request merges, then I can rerun the upgrade there. Just make sure everything works properly. But
I don't have an octopus cluster.
Yeah. All right.
Okay. I guess that's it for today.
Okay.
Cool. Goodbye.
And a heads up, I'm going to join Red Hat on April.
Oh boy.
Yeah.
Yay.
Congratulations.
You have like a week off or something, right?
Yes. Next week I'm off.
Yeah. Okay.
Okay.
All right. Have
Have
a
a
good
nice
one.
one.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye, guys.
Bye. Thank you.